Okay, so let's doing the hazards of chemicals. But before that, okay, I must say that chemicals are very important part of our lives, and then we can find them anywhere, everywhere, and it surrounds us. We can either eat them, drink them, or we can utilize them in our daily works or in the laboratory or for any special purposes. Okay, like that specifically for different chemical and physical separation processes. Like that, we can see them also in the market, in the school, in the in whatever private sectors areas or public sectors areas or whatever. And then the most significant issues for this are really the health hazards involved with a corresponding impact to the health or the risk at health. Not only that also, but the property damages brought to the most important fire and explosion. Okay, ganun. Okay, now hazards of chemicals. Okay. Actually, I don't like to, to vlog this over and over again. Nagipulan ko. Really, I've been doing this for so many years. Okay, so hazards of chemicals. Makita ba? Matalangka. Okay. Pasensya na guys because sometimes when I do the Google search, there's a lot of missing information. I wonder why. Because not all uploaders in the Google search also are technically adequate. Sometimes insufficient information. Really, okay. And sometimes also it's mixed up when you Google search. Sometimes there's an errors also. Okay, especially they cannot cheat us because we know very well about chemical formulas. But sometimes the chemical formulas written in the Google search are wrong. Okay, though it's not all, but I found it something incorrect. Okay, di na ako i-detalye. Okay, so that's why I don't really believe 100% in Google search. Okay. Of course, that is our data gathering there. But, we should not have a full trust for that. Because sometimes also it doesn't qualify also to the particular document you are doing, something like that's not pasok sa banga or whatever, di ba? During your organization of your content, sometimes. Okay? So, di kita mag-depend all the way for the Google search. Okay, hazards of chemicals. Okay. But for the independent websites or, it would be okay, for example, University of Calgary reference materials, Harvard University Public School of Health. It's okay, but what I mean in the general Google search, okay? Na yung pataka, okay? Ganon. Okay, hazards of chemicals. Okay. Di ba tayo magpataka? Mga ko sa hal. Okay. So, hazards of chemicals. Sama ni ini. Okay. Sa Google kay. Dahil dyan mong gawas. Kaloka. Okay. Hazards of chemicals are, okay, number 1. Of course, chemical hazard. Okay. But in the Google search, it will just say chemical hazards. Once you said chemical hazard, it's specific already. That is referring exclusively to chemical hazards, no other thing. But if you will say hazards of chemicals, there's a lot, not limited to chemical hazards. So there's a difference when you present the terms. You get the point? When you search like this, hazards of the chemical hazards in Google. And then it will appear here, there, chemical hazards. Okay, what about other hazards of chemicals? Okay, so that means we just say hazards of chemicals, not chemical hazards. Because chemical hazards is already specific to chemical hazard thing already. We could not break down that to other hazard already. You get the point? None. Okay. So number 2, we have a physical hazard. Okay. Okay, but other also references there, limited lang siya sa health hazards and fire exposure, but actually there's a lot. Ako na siyang ipunan-punan based on my, knowledge in my chemical engineering, also in my previous trainings also. Okay? Because there's an insufficient also in the Google search. Okay? Biological hazard. Sometimes there is biological, sometimes nothing. There's no consistency when you go to the Google search. Actually, so many will come, will pop up in the screen. Okay? But what I mean, let's say one of them or two of them will have not complete, though others also are stating the complete. That's what I mean. Okay, so on tendency you will click the insufficient, then Yahoo. So you will click the most comprehensive, something like that. So that's why if you have already the knowledge, then don't go to the Google. Okay, so it will mislead you sometimes. Sometimes only. Not all the times, okay? Biological hazards. Okay. Ganon. What else? Okay. Ergonomic hazards. Okay, like that. Nakataloka. Okay, guys. And then we have the health hazard. See, I separate the health hazards from the chemical hazard. Later I will explain why. Okay. Number 6 is fire and explosion. Fire and explosion is the most important special hazard of chemicals. Because the word alone will create various losses in our certain organization, plants and factories. Very obvious, fire and explosion. So we will treat this as the most important hazard. We will talk about using it in a process. Okay, but if you see also we use that in our medical laboratory, so we need to consider first also the health hazard. It depends on the, the context, what we are applying to. Okay, get the point? Because if it is a clinical, you use chemicals in the clinical setting or in the, hospital, of course, health hazard will be number 1. But if you talk about the processes in a plant, in the factories, fire and explosion will be the number 1. Get the point? Okay, multiple man siya, multiple property damages, and ganun. Facilities will be damaged, will be lost, destruction, and even death to people there. Something like that. It's more than, right? It's more than only the health, because sometimes the health diseases are occurring only after 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, not really that quick as it is. Usually, acute diseases lang ang makuha mo if you are exposed to your skin, hand, like that. Local, okay, local point lang, but not really that very dangerous unless overexposure. Okay, but if you have the fire exposure, very quick, so many will die, property damages like this, so many losses like really. So this is more important. Okay, fire and explosion. Okay. And then acute diseases and illnesses and sicknesses also, it can be solved also direct by first aid measures. Okay? Normally, first aid measures are also consult to the doctor directly. It's always like that. But this fire explosion too much, okay? When it happens, no one can stop it. Especially explosion. Oh gosh. Okay, so 6 lang din siya ha. Actually, mas alam pa siguro, but marami akong i-mention. Okay? So, hazards of chemicals are chemical hazards, physical hazards, biological hazards, ergonomic hazards, health hazards, fire explosion. Oh my gosh. Really? Why do you put ergonomic hazards? I will explain later. Murag di ka siya necessary ergonomic hazards. Okay. Chemical hazards, okay, gas, smoke, fume, dust, okay, mist, aerosols, okay, insecticides, okay, pesticides, sprays, okay, like that, or any gases released to the atmosphere, okay, each. So, gas, smoke, fume, dust, mists, aerosols, insecticides, pesticides, and sprays. Okay, ganon. So, usually releases or emits vapor. Okay? This mist, suspended droplets of water into the atmosphere, the mists. Okay? Aerosols are driven by gaseous. Actually, that's still started in the solid substance that will release vapor in the atmosphere. Okay? Insecticides is pretty obvious. Pesticides is pretty obvious. Sprays are pretty obvious. No need to explain. Okay? Okay. Now, physical hazard. Nakalibog, no? Physical hazard. So what are the physical hazards of the chemical? When we mean of physical hazards, we normally refer to the physical properties and the physical characteristic of the chemicals. For example, so how it will be boiled, okay? Will it boil 90 degrees Celsius, 80 degrees Celsius? So that is boiling point. Okay? Why? Okay. Later I will discuss it. Boiling point, melting point. Okay. Alat-alat open point, freezing point. Okay. That is another freezing point. Okay? Dew point, critical point, like that, freezing point, bubble point. Okay. Doon ka na siya sa chemical engineering. Okay. Freezing point, melting point. Ganun-ganan. What else? Viscosity. Ganan. Okay. Surface tension. Wow. Specific gravity. Okay. Like that. Density. Okay. Density. Okay. The pressure. Operating conditions also considered the physical hazard for chemicals. Pressure. As a certain pressure and temperature, some chemicals also will explode if you don't put a covering on it, if it is not sealed. So it's very important, the physical hazard really. So pressure, okay, temperature, sometimes the volume also, huh? Volume, okay. Why? Okay. So the more it has a higher volume, the more it will react to humid areas, especially if it is not closely covered. Or it will spill immediately if you have a higher volume, right, compared to the lower volume of chemicals. Things like that, okay? So that's still volume, under the issues of volume, right? Okay, so pressure, temperature, volume, specific gravity, density, surface tension, viscosity, boiling point, melting point, freezing point, like that. Okay, we have also the molecular weight or the masses. It's still under physical hazard, okay? And blah blah blah, so and so. There's a lot. I could not mention the other thing. Just refer the Paris Chemical Engineer's Handbook with the physical hazards for chemicals. Okay? Now, biological hazards. So, should you remember biological hazards? It's because there are a lot of chemical substances also that will convert to biological substances when it will react to other chemicals also, or even if it will expose to the open environment at a cold temperature, at a very hot temperature, like that. For example, let's say for example, you will put the oil, okay, the oil of a pig, if you put that in the refrigerator, it will become solid, like this, blah, 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 so and so, and the smell is very bad to the health. So it also converted to another substances. Okay, or some food you will put, it will form a mold, white spore forming bacteria. Okay, so not actually biological hazards ang chemical. Because if we mean chemical, it's not limited only to the chemical liquid solvents that we have in the laboratory. It should be all. whether it is a food, drink, like that, or whether it is the water we drink, whether it is the air we breathe, that's still chemical substance to be considered. Okay, not limited to poisonous only and hazardous chemical is what we label on our brain cells. When we speak about chemical substance, everything we see are already chemicals. Get the point? For example, water, I drink water every day, and then it composed of hydrogen atoms and oxygen. So basically, it's chemicals already composed of hydrogen and oxygen. So our mind should be like that, not limited to if we mean about chemicals, we always talk about toxicity, like this, radioactive. No, it's not like that. Okay? The air itself is a chemical already composed of 79% nitrogen, okay, and 21% oxygen into the atmosphere. Ganon. Okay. So atong i-change atong mentality, we talk about chemicals. Okay? So, biological hazards are those chemical substances that will produce or will form mold. Okay, mold, fungi or fungus, bacteria, okay, parasite, okay, worm, like that. Okay, after how many months, then you will see a worm, though it is a liquid, something like that. So, meaning to say it will be converted later on because the presence of the water or the moisture or the sun, okay, the light energy, something like that. So, it's not limited only to like this, okay? So, molds, fungi, bacteria, parasite, worms, yes. Okay, yes, like that. Okay, ganon. Muna siya mga biological hazards. Okay. Not really with viruses, because viruses really will just, will just be there if there are outlet for them to be there. Okay? But these are, natural really. Okay? So, ergonomic hazards. Ergonomic hazards, why? So these are for the, for laboratory workers, right? If they keep on, repetitive handling the chemicals during their job, so it can create back pain, like that, lower back pain, like that, and it can create them stresses in their, in their arm, the muscle strains and sprains like that. Any musculoskeletal disorder na mag-iso silang barug or whatever, cramps. So those are under ergonomic hazards during repetitive handling and using of chemicals, right, like that. So that's ergonomic hazards. Not really that, but still it is important because if you cannot move properly, how can you do your job properly? Right? So you should also take note the ergonomic hazards in handling that and using the chemicals. So no need to explain, it's already discussed, right? And then health hazard. Gibuwag yun ang health hazard. Sometimes other books, we will say that this health hazard is also the chemical hazard, but it's not. We will separate them. When we speak about health hazards, this basically carcinogen, okay, pathogen, okay, pathogenic, poisonous, okay, irritant, okay, sensitizer, corrosive, ganon. Okay, and then combustibility or the ability of the materials to decompose. Okay, okay, but the flammability is not included here, and the explosivity is under fire and explosion. So explosivity. Okay, flammability, reactivity, okay, ganon-ganon, chupa-chuchu. Okay, ang other cell hazards, guys, is carcinogen, pathogen. So, chemical substances that can cause cancer are carcinogens. Okay, the word itself is very self-explanatory. Okay, pathogens are substances that can cause diseases, or chemical substances that can trigger diseases inside our system. Okay, poisonous, no need to explain, that causes poison to human being. Okay, so irritant meaning usually the skin surfaces. Okay, it will create chemical burn and burn, very itchy, like that, very irritating to the skin. Okay, sensitizer meaning the attack will be on still a chemical burn, but the attack is not in the external. It should be in the internal, inside the throat, inside the larynx, inside the esophagus, the respiratory, like that. Okay, the irritation through the contact of this, chemical exposure. Yan. Corrosive, of course, external pa rin siya sa skin surfaces. Okay, na may mga evidence of redness, swollen, manhood or mamaga. Okay, and then there's a little pain and injury, especially if there's a wound, there's a laceration, there's a cut, then that would trigger also the swollen, the pain. Okay? So muna siya ang mga sa corrosive. Oh. Ganon. Fire and explosion, no need to explain, very obvious, but the causes will be the explosive rating of the chemicals, explosivity, flammability, and reactivity. Oh, muna siya maka-cause of fire and explosion. Okay, so explosivity, flammability, and reactivity. So sa reactivity, of course, how reactive to the chemicals. Okay, usually driven by chemical reaction, but no need to do that in a simple setting in the organization, right? We cannot do the analysis there. Oh, let's contact this one. No need. As long as it is reactive, then it will go. But this flammability is very obvious, that flash point to be considered. The lowest temperature that vapor can create a flash of fire or will be ignited in the presence of the ignition source. Ganon. Okay. So explosivity rating mo na siya ang based on the lower explosive limit value. Okay, so as much as possible, it's always lesser than 5% or better than siya 0. Okay, so that there's no chance of explosion of the particular chemicals. Okay? Kaya even though it is really flammable, if there's no explosion, hindi na siya explode. Only fire will be happening. But most cases, especially, organic liquids, it will start with explosion and then fire will later. Only one time, like that, and then fire will come after. Okay? But some only fire, there's no explosion because the chemicals there don't have really high explosion rating. But sometimes, most of the times, these two are together. Okay, because we don't know that when it happens, we never heard that it's already exploded, but we don't just heard it actually. Okay, something like that. Unless we are there very near the conditioning sound. Ganon. Okay, so that is muna na siya ang hazard of chemicals. Okay, any questions so far? Thank you so much. Any comment? You can comment down below in the comment section, and you can subscribe to my channel. This is again MSDS Voice. You can click the notification bell for some newest updates of MSDS. Thank you so much. Bye, God bless everybody. See you later. Ganon. Kaloka.